So at Capgemini, you're one of the largest professional services organizations worldwide. You've got about 360,000 people around the world working across a whole range of industries, including, of course, insurance. Your role is as insurance practice leader. And I know one of the areas that you've been particularly interested in focusing on is this whole topic of generative AI.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So you describe yourself as solving the client pain points with the power of digital. So what are the kind of pain points your clients are bringing to you these days?
Problems we are dealing with for our clients nowadays are not that dissimilar what they have been over the past 5 years, except they come faster and thicker now. And with the changes in the economic environment, we can see our clients are looking to solve their legacy and go-to-market issues and the speed and resilience in slightly different way. And instead of having a one big bang solution, they go for a multiple of 20%, or you could say of a program, and each time they commit to that 20%. So they know they got an outcome from that, and then they can adjust and change tact depending on the evolution of the market. So the issues continue to be, speed to market. How do we get control and access and use our data? How do we move out of our legacy stack, and can we get on the latest and best tools that give us kind of that competitive advantage in the market?
And that more incremental approach to change, is that leading to more success?
It definitely, it does de-risk the project, and I think the proposition and the solutions people like Capgemini and others can offer nowadays lends itself much more to be able to be incremental than before. Whereas before you were trying to resolve with one single large, system to run as your ERP. Now you can do that in multiple phases with multiple different solutions. One other one which is quite big is the access to talent, training, and capability, and being able to stand up the right level of expertise, knowing how you are working with your incremental change. Because again, when you're doing that, you need to arm yourself with a different caliber, you could say, of talent in order to be able to adjust your programs and implementations as they evolve.
And I suspect that's going to get even harder because generative AI is the topic on everyone's lips just now. What kind of people are you going to be bringing into the organization?
So we've committed to a €2 billion investment in generative AI people and training over the next 3 years. For that, we'll be recruiting 30,000 new people, predominantly in the data and then specifically with generative AI backgrounds that we can hone into our deliveries. But also we are investing significantly in future-proofing our current workforce in generative AI technologies.
How do you make sure that what you're learning or what the tools are learning is actually fact as opposed to hallucination?
You need to build the guardrails before you start. You need to know effectively the box that you've got your Gen AI in before you let it loose. Like you say, they are keen to please. And we find kind of in the pilots we're running that this human loop is critical. So if we look at, on the insurance side of things, underwriting, huge level of research needed and investigations kind of when you're providing a quote. There's an acceleration here, but you can't replace the experience and the oversight of the human. So it doesn't really replace it, but instead of spending 4 hours making a quote, you can do it probably in 2.5.
What are those companies that are at the forefront of using generative AI doing, the insurance companies today?
What they're doing is they're probably building capability faster than anyone else. So they are investing kind of in the future. This is training and mobilizing their staff and internal organization. They've usually have set up a multi-purpose teams working on the user stories or prospects for the Gen AI. They will be more aggressive in terms of building those sandboxes for the generative AI pilots. And what we're seeing in the market is that a lot of piloting is happening now, a lot of learning, and that's going to continue, I think, into all of next year. I think that the real explosion in terms of deployment of products and solutions out of Gen AI is going to start coming in 2025.
And running those pilots, that's part of what you do at Capgemini, is that right?
Yeah, so we have a ready-made pilot environment with guardrails, sandboxes. We work with the top 15 providers of insurance in UK and US on that. So we have 160 use cases kind of under investigations, about 30 pilots on the go, of which 7 or 8 have kind of gone quite far. So we can see the different use cases, where the market is heading, and what people are most interested in. And it's safe to say it's broad. It's broad. It's not just people looking at ways to generate code cheaper and faster, or to do the testing cheaper and faster. It ranges from HR to career development of your employees to evolution of your products.
Which part of the business would you use as an example where people are starting to run pilots, and how does that? And I also am interested, if an insurance company is doing a pilot, who in that organization is actually running or working on the pilot with you?
We've seen those pilots kind of coming more into more tactical and more, you could say, short-term useful while they're learning. Organizations are looking at what claims should be payable and should not be contested versus the ones that should be contested. So particularly when you're talking about large claims, in being able to better predict your likelihood of win or a loss in those can help you decide where you invest your legal effort going forward, and where you settle early and possibly at a lower cost. So that's an example of one where it's very high return, but it's a high risk as well. So in order to then deploy that fully into the environment, you need to be very certain that that your AI, your Gen AI, is doing the right thing. And I think it's an example of a healthcare company in the US that the AI, it was not a Gen AI, but the AI rejected 300,000 claims. And that's now been taken to court.
Yeah, it's that classic problem of the false positives. So you on the one hand, you want to make sure you're not missing fraud that should be rejected, but on the other hand, it sounds like in this example, you've got to be very careful not to reject genuine claims. And I guess that's partly why you say you still need the human in the loop to monitor it. But it is interesting how different insurance companies have got different appetites.
Different appetite. And if I give you another example, which is kind of probably closer to home, which is we're working with an insurer where they are using the generative AI to improve the code, so writing code. So they are improving the quality of the code significantly, and productivity is growing significantly as well. I mean, mind-bogglingly so. And these are kind of areas where you can see very short-term productivity gains, but again, how do you scale them up? Every client is different, every environment. So depending on how mature your coders are, how mature your business is in terms of its requirements, how much benefit you see, and how well you can deploy it. It's still kind of a part of a learning curve, but we've seen out of the pilots we've been running, it's a significant opportunity there if it's handled in the right way.
And talking about that coding and coming back to your point earlier about training people, I've been looking at what's possible with Python code and generative AI. There's a level where as you bring people into the organization or you train your own people, that actually learning to code is very helpful because it gives people an ability to actually scale that quite significantly. So are you seeing that? And I suspect it also may link into your recruitment, but is that part of your training, is actually training people to do things that are not necessarily directly around generative AI, but they're actually enablers for using generative AI tools?
Absolutely, because it's not just about training in a generative AI tool. You need other foundations to be taking advantage of it. And what we're seeing now, you asked earlier about what kind of teams our clients were deploying. The most productive ones, where you're getting the most you could say, imaginative and practical, and you could quality of test cases is where you have a multi-functional AI team that is given the mechanism, whether it's a sandbox and the support to actually test. And where we see those teams coming together, they come up with solutions that you think that's going to work once they get this right, versus where we've also seen where you've got quite a limited, narrow selection of skill sets in the teams, and they obviously pick the problems they face every day and are more narrow and go deeper.
And as part of that overall training, then we talked about this, the technology training, but as you talk there, you're starting to get into creativity, sometimes called design thinking. There's a whole element there. Some of the more advanced companies we know are very thoughtful about how they build their products. So you also, when you're training people on how to create new ideas and new products, as well as just purely the technical aspects.
Absolutely. That's a part of it, and we are fortunate of being the scale we're at, where we have large teams working solely on innovation, new products. That I spoke there about the clients having multifunctional teams. This is kind of what we do for a living, is bringing multifunctions into different challenging areas, and therefore kind of giving our clients and ourselves a far better chance of succeeding and delivering an excellent outcome.
What's the experience starting to be like from the people that are the receiving end who are now being asked to use these tools to engage with their insurer?
We did a survey on our consumers in multiple geographies, and the level of trust that consumers have surprised us in generative AI. So if they knew the response out of the search or recommendation was a generative AI solution, that 70% plus believed that was a trustworthy recommendation. And that is a number that is much greater than if you go on a government website and ask people, do you believe in the statistics that are coming out of the government? So it's quite a high levels of trust in the generative AI process, without really understanding how it comes together and what the risks of that recommendation or suggestions might be. One very important point we're seeing in the insurance industry is that we have more experience and talent leaving the industry out of retirement, and even moving to other parts of the economy than we are replenishing. And statistics show about 400,000 insurance professionals will be retiring in the US market. So 400,000 over the next 7 years. There is, looking at the pipeline of talent coming in and the growth of experience, is very difficult to keep up with that. So how do you replace that talent pool? And generative AI has to be one of the answers to that. Not the sole answer, but one of the answers of how you can evolve the new breed of actuaries who use generative AI in a different way, and makes them therefore more productive and able to perhaps do the work with less effort.
And you mentioned the US in there, and it just occurs to me, is there a difference by geography in terms of how people are adopting generative AI?
The largest difference is dependent on scale. So we look at our largest insurers. They can afford to invest in Gen AI in the tens of millions without a need for return this year, because they can see the benefit case is strong if you look 5 years ahead. Whereas the smaller, medium size, they have to be a lot more selective and probably won't have the option of doing that. They'll have to wait for the solution to evolve in the marketplace and buy it from there.
But of course, it does get expensive if you're doing this commercially. But what is driving those costs for those insurance organizations?
The costs are, it is the same as you're moving from legacy data center to a cloud. If you constantly running analysis on that cloud, it'll cost you more than the data center. For example, if you then decide to run a generative AI, which is kind of highly takes a lot of energy to do, it'll cost you even more. So we're seeing organizations who are advanced with the pilots, they understand that you can't just kind of put a blanket on top of everything you do. You need to be selective about where it gives you the greatest benefits, whether that is in developing kind of your relationship with your customers or your HR or with your coding. The cost of running generative AI on a large a large data set is high.
Well, Chris, you covered an awful lot there. For anybody now who wants to learn a little bit more about what next, particularly if they're working at an insurance company and want to consider bringing Capgemini in to help them, what's the best way to learn more about what you're doing and find the people to talk to?
Well, simplest thing is to get in touch with me, Kristofer Fontenay. You find me on LinkedIn, and get in touch, and I can get you connected with the right people.
Excellent. Well, Chris, there aren't many people with your name on LinkedIn. I think you're unique, so there shouldn't be any problem with finding you, and we'll put a link in the episode notes. That's been tremendous. So just before we wrap up, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like to add into the discussion today?
Well, we haven't touched on anything on tractors yet and generative AI and tractors, but I actually, to be honest with you, I don't have a view on that yet.
I think that might have to be a separate podcast.